Hello everyone, Katerina here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I hope you are all doing well. Today I have for you a very simple card. I will just stamp a bouquet of flowers and color it with zig brush markers. This is sort of a part 2 to the card I made for Mother's Day. In the stamp set I'm using today are 2 bouquets of flowers. And the first one I used on the Mother's Day card, where I also used the zig brush markers, but I use them with water like watercolors since the zigs are water-based. And in this video I will be coloring without water, just as you would with alcohol markers like Copics. So let's jump into it. I will start with the supplies. The stamp set I'm using is from Clearly Besotted. As I said, I used the first stamp for my Mother's Day card. I will link the video in the description below. And today I'm using the other stamp. I checked on Clearly Besotted website. They no longer sell the stamp set with the 2 bouquets. They only have the bouquet I used on the Mother's Day card. But you can use any other stamp set. This video is mainly about the coloring. I selected the colors of the zig brush markers. You can use any water-based brush markers if you don't have the zigs. I took out the reds and greens. And then I also got the idea to color the big flowers and the leaves with the black and grays and only add color to the small flowers and the bow. And that's the coloring I will show you today, although you will also see the card with the red flowers as well. The cardstock I'm using is the Canson XL Mixed Media. I had few panels I had left over from die cutting where I used the stitch rectangle dies. Because I don't have a die cutting machine right now, I haven't shown you yet my video with my crafty things I took with me to Sweden, to our new house, but that's what I will mention there. My die cutting machine is still in Germany. Anyways, I started by stamping the bouquet of flowers. I placed the cardstock into my Mini Misty stamping tool and inked up the stamp using the VersaFine ink in Onyx Black. I actually had to stamp few times. I found it difficult to get a good coverage of the ink around the middle of the image. I will start with the coloring using the blacks and grays, and I also picked up few yellows and oranges for the little flowers. The coloring took me quite a while and I wasn't doing anything special. I will not show you all of the coloring, otherwise this video would be way too long. I just wanted to share with you what I do when I color flowers and leaves. Normally, you are supposed to pick the light source and color and shade accordingly. I really like images where the coloring looks very dimensional and you see the person did a very good job with the shading. Well, I cannot do that and I don't really care enough to be bothered to learn. But I don't want my images to look flat either. Yes, there is art that uses flat colors and it looks really cool, but this is not what I'm going for. So what do? Well, I don't do anything exciting, I just fake it. What do I mean by that? I don't put too much emphasis on the light source. It doesn't mean I don't care about it, I just don't pick one specific place where the light source is coming from. The way I color, you could say each flower and leaf have its own light source. For me, this way the coloring is way more easier. To color the flowers, I use the dark and light gray markers. On each flower with the more exposed petals, I apply the darker color to the bottom of the petal and lighter to the top. I didn't need to apply too much of the darker color. Since these are water-based markers, I was able to bring the darker color with the lighter gray and blend it together. For the petals that are behind or below, I also added the darker color to the edge where the top petal would be overlapping. Let me show you one more flower and then I talk about the stems and the leaves. For the stems and the leaves, I also added the black marker and I pretty much did the same as on the petals. I have few approaches or ways how I color. The first one is pretty much the most obvious, and that is when I know that there would be a shade. like the stems underneath the bow or inside of the bow. Those places would be dark for sure in most light source scenarios. The next approach is when the petal or leaf is fully visible. In that case, I apply the darker color to the bottom of the image and go lighter on the top. And the last approach is when the petal or leaf is behind, meaning there is something overlapping it. I already mentioned that. In this case, I also added the darker color to the edges of the overlapping image. There are also petals or leaves that are bent, for example. In those cases, I just guess which part I make darker and which one I make lighter. I finished the rest of the coloring with the grays and blacks off camera, and this is the finished result. I think it looks really nice. Next, I colored the little flowers, the insides of the big flowers, and the bow. On the little flowers and the insides of the big flower, I used 2 shades of a color, but you don't really see it in the end. Actually, the reason why I mainly used 2 shades is because I only have 2 shades of each color. But for the bow, I was able to find a matching 3rd shade. I will play a little bit of music now and finish up the coloring, and I will be back in a bit. The coloring is finished. I think it looks really nice. Definitely doesn't look flat. And I also like the pop of color that I added. Here you can see also the panel with the red flowers. I thought I will show it in this video, but that would make this video way too long and I didn't do anything different anyway. Next, I was going to add the sentiment. There are nice sentiments included in the stamp set with the bouquets. For example, there is the sentiment "Just for you." But the only thing I could think of for this size of a stamp is to heat emboss with a white embossing powder on a black cardstock. And I did not want to do embossing. I wanted to stamp directly on top of the panel, and this kind of a sentiment would just look a little bit lost. So I took another sentiment stamp set from Clearly Besotted. Sadly, this one is also not available anymore, but the Just For You stamp was the perfect type. I could stamp it in the corner and it was bold enough to see when it overlaps with the image. And I stamped it on both panels using the VersaFine ink in Onyx Black. To assemble the cards, I used the black card base for the gray flowers, and for the red flowers I used a card base from a craft cardstock, and I adhered the panels using double-sided foam tape. Lastly, I decided to add some sequins. Usually I forget about it, but I'm glad that this time I didn't. I only used clear sequins in 3 different sizes and I randomly adhered it to the top of the panel. The glue I used here is the multimedia matte adhesive from Ranger. I squeezed a little bit of glue on the side onto a sticky note. Often when I try squeezing out the glue directly onto the panel, too much glue comes out, creating a mess. I know you can use an applicator for the glue. I used to use it, but I had troubles squeezing out the glue from the bottle and I could not get the glue out at all. So the cards are finished. I hope this inspired you to take out your ZigBrush markers and do some coloring. Also, let me know what is your approach to shading. Are you doing the proper shading and picking up one light source, or are you guessing just like me? Before you go, make sure you like this video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You can watch the card with the other bouquet that I colored for Mother's Day using the zigs with water. Just click on the video on the left side of your screen. And if you haven't watched my video where I watercolored a watermelon without any stamps or dies, make sure you do. The video is on the right side. Thank you for watching and I will see you next time.